these, you know, what expertise do any of those people have on the Middle East? Nothing. He just put a bunch of sort of drones on there that he could manipulate them all and do the same thing he did after the first Iraq campaign and mess the Kurds and Shiites up. And if you notice, the Kurdish leaders already rejected the Baker Committee plan as, you know, would totally undermine everything that we've accomplished here and everything that we've achieved. And that's the only peaceful place in Iraq. So yeah, what he's going to do is undermine the only place that there is any peace. Well, go on. Anyway, I don't want to go into all those things, but you know, just don't be deceived by all these things. Use your head if you possibly can, and maybe help others use their head. Well, what happened in 1937 was that the agitation began, led by the Mufti, and I told you the Mufti later was Hitler's advisor on the final solution. And he pushed Hitler. Now, I don't know, Hitler didn't need a lot of pushing, you say, but you know, I'm not sure if this fellow actually went to Berlin because he was thrown out of Palestine by the British for the agitation that was going on there and so on that led to this Peel Commission. He went to Berlin and he was insisted that all the Jews be killed. That was his. This was his program. Now, whether the Nazis didn't want to do that anyway, of course, I'm sure a lot were interested in doing that anyway. But I'm sure to have a reinforcement sort of thing like that was very useful and encouraging to them. You go around the concentration camps and look at them, you know. And, you couldn't maybe look up this individual. And I said Yasser Arafat is considered to be a nephew or something of his. That family is still very important, the Husseini family in Palestinian affairs. I'm not on where they are at the moment. Anyway, so this Peel Commission was a commission of the British, just sort of like the Baker Report, to see how we can solve this horrendous situation we've created for ourselves in Palestine. You know, maybe 15 years have gone by, and both communities are in an uproar now, and you're getting Arab terrorism and so on and so forth. One other person that was functioning in this period was a person called Ord Wingate, who I dedicate partially my James book to because of the conversation I think I told some of you about. I won't repeat it in other of my classes that you may have heard. But Wingate was a young British officer. He was the nephew of a person called Sir Reginald Wingate, who had been the Governor General of the Sudan at the time of the following the Chinese Gordon events at Khartoum, when Chinese Gordon, famous British hero, went down to Khartoum and tried to withstand the Mahdi was having a revolt there. And there's been a movie about that too. I think it's called Chinese Gordon or something like that, the movie. Or Khartoum, maybe it's called Khartoum. Anyway, it's with I think it was with Charlton Heston, as I recall, as Chinese Gordon. But the Mahdi was supposed to be the you know, the sort of messianic return of Muhammad, and according to Shiite Islamic theology of some kind. But the return of the Imam. Anyway, Reginald Wingate was the Governor General down there, and then this was one of his nephews. And he went to military academies, but he was homeschooled, and he was a part of an evangelical British group called the Plymouth Brethren. His parents were very, very religious, and he knew the Bible inside and out. And very colorful life, but he was in the Sudan originally, hunting down slavers there when he learned Arabic. He was distantly related to T. Lawrence. And then he went to Palestine because he knew Arabic and he had a lot of experience there. And he got the idea that because the Arab revolt was going on and they were sabotaging the oil pipelines, going to the Haifa refineries and things, that he would, he told the general there who was in command that he thought they should have, they should take advantage of the Jewish kibbutzes and organize Jewish night raiding squads. And they thought this was crazy, but he went to the kibbutzim and he showed them that he could do things better than they could as far as tracking the land and do all this stuff, and he laid the foundations for the Israeli army. He knew Chaim Weizmann and so on, and once he went into Chaim Weizmann's office and he said, go into go in, and this was after he'd been thrown out of Palestine during World War II. He used to always go to visit Chaim Weizmann in London, and he'd say, you know, go into the Foreign Office and demand a Jewish army. He wanted to lead a Jewish army. That was even though he wasn't Jewish or anything, but he saw it in biblical terms. And Weizmann, I said to him, yes, that's maybe what you would do, pound the table and then walk out. He said, but I want to be able to go into the Foreign Office many times, not just once. So that's because Weizmann's approach very, very slow, and maybe that's the right approach, but not going to get a lot done with the British like that. Anyway, he was so successful that they threw him out of Palestine too and forbade him ever to come back, Wingate, even though he was a British officer. So they put him in some location up in northern England someplace, in an artillery battery. And then when World War II broke out, he was sent down to Ethiopia. I think I told you about him. And he led Haile Selassie's irregulars to defeat the Italians in Ethiopia and put Haile Selassie back on the throne there. And he did that with kibbutz people that he had in Palestine. In any case, his first British victory in World War II. And then he was tried to kill himself in Cairo because they still wouldn't let him go back to Palestine. He wanted to, this was 1942, he wanted to organize the Jews into fighting units to fight the Germans, and he was refused. And it was so depressing. No British officer ever tries to commit suicide, so we sent him out to the boondocks again. And then the officer in Palestine, who had originally sponsored his night raiding squad, was named Wavell, and he became the commander of the forces in India, the British forces in India. And the problem was the Japanese coming up through the Burma and those places. And so Wingate was, because he was an irregular fighter, became the youngest general in the British Army. He became a major general. He did the Chindit campaigns, famous guerrilla campaigns where you would drop supplies in front of your troops and you operate behind enemy lines. And he was the only one who had achieved any victories against the Japanese among the British at that time. And then he was killed in a suspicious plane crash in 1944 in an American crew, and he's buried in Arlington National Cemetery. So that's just another person in this period of events around the Peel Commission, but it's interesting to read about him. The point is that at this point, the British were going back on the mandate. Most of the civil servants there were against the mandate, sympathized with the Arabs, and they wanted to stop it, so they held this commission, and that's where Weizmann breaks down here. He's giving testimony before the Peel Commission. That's where we left off last time. Bush, all this was for your benefit because you weren't here last time. And